We saw John F. Kennedy in the early 1990s. I know that you probably won't believe my story, but it is true. My honor and dignity as a Christian is important to me. Even today, I am still frightened by what I saw that day back in the early 1990s. I live in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and was working in a retail store as a sales manager back then. The day was as usual as a summer day is, June or July, and the sun was shining bright. Inside the store, I began walking to the back of the store to go on break or to get my paperwork. I can't remember which. This store was large, and when I had walked a certain distance, it seemed like time had stood still and nobody was around me. It was really strange. Only a good friend and fellow sales manager was near me, and then we both saw him. A man came walking forward towards us, and we just stood in awe at what we were seeing. We both knew instantly who the man was. You see, the man was President John F. Kennedy. At an age he would have been in the early 1990s, in his early 70s with gray hair. Well, you might ask, could it have been a person who resembled the late President Kennedy? No, because something about him made us know who we were seeing. The man wore ordinary clothes, but he had a massive scar down the entire left side of his skull, the very area the fatal headshot was fired and killed the president in Dallas, Texas, on November 1963. It looked as if that side of his entire skull had been blown away and reattached somehow. The scar marks were plainly visible to see. He looked right at me and continued walking until he got out of sight. My friend and I just stood there staring at each other. I said, "Did you just see what I saw?" And my friend replied, "Yes, but I'm sure not going to tell anybody about it." We agreed to keep quiet. I ran to find the Kennedy ghost man again, but he was gone. He simply vanished. This story is absolutely true, and I never even told my fiance about it. I keep asking myself today why the deceased President John F. Kennedy would contact me, of all people. He had always been my favorite US president, but this was truly a crazy experience. I indeed saw John F. Kennedy in some sort of purgatory spirit world, or his spirit contacting me in one form or another. John Lennon's ghost. On December 8th, 1980, former Beatle John Lennon and his wife, Yoko Ono, were just returning home to the Dakota, a luxury apartment building in Manhattan, when a deranged fan shot Lennon 5 times in the back near the entrance to the Dakota. En route to Roosevelt Hospital, John Lennon died. John Lennon was 40 years old. Lennon had an open mind when it came to the paranormal. While traveling and living at the Dakota, he reported seeing a spectral figure walking down the corridors, which he referred to as the crying lady ghost. He told his first wife, Cynthia Lennon, that if he passed away, he would contact her. In 1986, Cynthia reported that John had indeed sent her a sign. She found a dead jackdaw wrapped in old newspapers, dated 1956, behind the fireplace in her home in Cumbria. John had told her if there was life after death, he would prove it by sending her and Julian, their son, a feather as a sign. John's ghost has been seen at the Dakota on several occasions. In 1983, 3 years after Lennon's death, Joey Harrell, a musician accompanied by a writer friend, Amanda Moores, spotted Lennon near the entrance where he was shot. Moores stated she was tempted to approach Lennon and talk, but his expression dissuaded her. Harrell reported that when Lennon appeared, an eerie light surrounded him. Yoko Ono also encountered John Lennon's ghost at the Dakota. She stated that she saw him sitting at his white piano. He turned to her and said, Don't be afraid. I am still with you. Paul McCartney described these encounters he had with Lennon's ghost. In 1995, when he, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr were singing Lennon's song Free as a Bird during a recording session, McCartney stated he felt Lennon was in the studio with him. As it turned out, this was more than just a feeling. McCartney went on to state, there were a lot of strange going-ons in the studio, noises that shouldn't have been, and equipment doing all manner of weird things. In another encounter, McCartney said that during a photo shoot for the single, a white peacock wandered over from the neighboring farm. At the last minute, the beautiful bird made its presence known. McCartney felt it was the spirit of John Lennon hanging around as they wrapped the recording. McCartney stated to Harrison and Starr, "That's John. Spooky, eh?" After the recording, while McCartney, Harrison, and Starr listened to the single's B-side, he stated that John again was making his presence known. McCartney explained they had just put a spoof backwards recording on the end of the single for a laugh and to amuse fans. As they listened to the finished single one night in the studio, McCartney swears, as it got to the end, they heard John Lennon in the recording itself. Paul McCartney stated that he and George and Ringo, after this, knew it was John and that he was sending his approval.